How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today I bring you a story from ESPN, a story that's kind of funny, but not really surprising. If you know anything about ESPN, if you've been watching them over the past few years, not even just watching the station, but just following them in the media, some of the stunts they've pulled, and also their interior corporate structure. If you know anything about that, then this story does not surprise you, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. The story I'm talking about right now today is of an Asian announcer by the name of Robert Lee being pulled from announcing the UVA home opener. Now, if you don't know why they did that, I'll explain. UVA, that's the University of Virginia. Remember the whole situation in Charlottesville with the statue of Robert E. Lee? That was on the campus of UVA. So ESPN thought it would be a good idea to pull him because they did not want to have social media trolls be all on his back. But as of right now, Wednesday, August 23rd, I'm seeing memes everywhere, so that didn't work. And they also wanted to be sensitive to people that are on the campus of UVA because one person did die, unfortunately, and many others got injured. But how are you going to punish him? The guy's Asian, okay? He's an Asian guy who happens to be named Robert Lee. How are you going to punish him for having a common Asian name of Lee? It doesn't make any sense, but this is not anything new from ESPN, right? To play the identity politics. You know, they're going to try to say, oh, it's to protect him. He just got a promotion. He didn't want to be put in the public eye and be made fun of. Well, it's too late for that now because everybody's going to do videos about it. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be a point of contention. Really keeping him on would have given him less attention than not having him on. You see what I'm saying? Because now everybody's going to focus on him not being there versus him being there. I doubt the game will actually be broadcast on TV. It'd probably be like a radio situation. Maybe a radio situation, maybe not. But if it was on TV, it probably wouldn't be on ESPN 1 or ESPN 2. It might be on ESPNU or something like that, a more obscure station. So it would get less eyes on it. But now you put this news out here to the whole internet. Now we all have it. It has more exposure now than it would have had back then. But I digress. Now, this situation is really crazy. But like I said, it's not something that is a surprise from ESPN. We've seen them do things like this before. Not necessarily be racist against an Asian person because of their name or anything silly like that. And by the way, my uncle is named Robert Lee. I'm not lying. First name, middle name, Robert Lee. And he looks just like me, just, 80 years old. So does he get the same treatment that this guy gets because of his name? I mean, where do we stop? That's a whole slippery slope argument, but I digress. Let's get back to ESPN and what they've done in the past. Now, we've seen what they do when it comes to identity politics. Look at what they did with Caitlyn Jenner. Remember that Courage Award? That was really despicable for what they did in that situation. Not because, Caitlyn Jenner's transgender or whatever. I'm not worried about what he or she does with his penis. That's his own business or her own business, whatever. The whole point was that in that category for the Courage Award, it was a female, an actual woman, a basketball player who was dying of cancer, but was still playing basketball, right? That's courage right there, to remove your body parts and all that voluntarily just because you want to feel like a woman or whatever. That's one thing, but somebody is actually dying. I think the person had like a brain tumor or something like that. They were dying of cancer, but was still continuing to play college basketball. That right there, that shows a lot of heart. Okay. So that was a despicable moment. The reason why Caitlyn Jenner won was because of identity politics. It's because of all the things on the interior of ESPN, which I'll get to in a little bit later. Remember during the draft, if I'm not mistaken, it was on ESPN, and there was this whole big thing about Michael Sam being drafted to the NFL. That might have been 3-4 years ago. I'm not really sure when it was. It was a while ago. Michael Sam was going to be the first openly gay football player to be drafted into the league. And then they made this whole big hullabaloo about it. He was a low round draft pick. He was like almost the very last pick. I think it was 249 out of 256. He was very low when it comes to draft pick. 7th round. He was not really a good player for the NFL. I don't think he's in the league anymore. I don't think he actually made the league, but I digress. Now, what they did with him, they had a camera at his house, and when he got drafted, they showed him and his boyfriend kissing, smashing cake into each other's faces. People really didn't like that. I mean, the announcers that were there, you got to understand, football, sports in general, especially football, is a conservative man's realm. It's not for liberal people. A lot of liberals don't even like sports, okay? A lot of these guys never play sports in their life. They don't like sports, so it's not for them. So to see something like that to see these two men kissing, you don't even really see heterosexual people kissing like that on the draft. But for them to have so much PDA, like two men, it really was just too much. You know, people was, watching it with their kids. It's not something you really want to see. And then they're replaying it in commercials and stuff like that. It just wasn't a good look. Even the announcers had just like a look of disgust on their face. They couldn't hide it. And as an announcer on TV, as somebody's at the draft, you got the suit and tie on, you want to keep kind of a stoic presence or not show your emotion if it's negative in a situation like that. But they couldn't help it. I mean, these are men now. At the end of the day, man gotta stand for something. That right there was totally inappropriate, but that's how ESPN operates. I think Jason Whitlock is a former ESPN employee, and he was on Rubin's show talking about how ESPN is in their whole corporate structure. Check this out.
Massive corporations in this era are a lot like Congress. They're a lot like Washington. It's a lot like having something in DC politics. There are so many special interest groups within a massive corporation. ESPN has something called Pulse, People United to Serve and Lead and Excel. It's their Black employees group. Mm-hmm. They got something called Pride, People Respectful of Individual Diversity, Excellence, or so. It's their gay special interest group. They have a couple other special interest groups. And again, when you have special interest groups, it makes decisions very compromised. ESPN isn't a startup business that gets to ignore virtually every rule and just do what's right and will deal. ESPN is an environment, and most major corporations are. Human resource departments are all powerful. If you've gathered up some special interest groups, they have a lot of powerful. And it's hard to make the absolute best decision in that environment.
Okay, so you see what he said there. Now, I mean, I think that pretty much explains it. You have all these special interest groups. You got the Black group, you got the gay group, probably got one for Hispanics, probably got one for women, probably got one for disabled, all kind of different special interest groups. And then they invade the meeting room when a decision is being made, and you have to be able to please those special interest groups. So the whole Michael Sam coverage, that probably was a special interest group decision. Same thing with Caitlyn Jenner, and same thing with Robert Lee. You probably had the Black group talk about it and say, oh, well, you got to pull him because Robert E. Lee, that's going to draw too many parallels. I'm offended. I'm triggered. I got to be put into my safe space. But this is just really ridiculous. At what point do you try to cater to the special interest group so much that you offend other people? Like I always say, I'm all for free speech. You can pretty much say whatever you want, do whatever you want, as long as you don't infringe upon me, as long as you don't try to get me to do what you want me to do, right? Okay, if you want to be gay, that's your business, but don't tell me I got to be gay. I saw some article talking about if you don't want to have sex with a transgender man, if you're a man, that means you're transphobic. I mean, at a certain point, you're trolling. But you know what? Some of these things may seem just ridiculous and far-fetched, but they're not too far from reality. And we're seeing what's going on right here with the removal of a guy from announcing. This is going to create more problems his way than it solves. So the whole thing about, oh, we didn't want to get attacked by social media trolls, that was just really a farce. that was really silly, because now the news is out there. I mean, I don't know how it got out. They put out a press release or whatever, but it's out there now. So now we know. So there's going to be more attention directed towards him unfairly because of the decision that you made. Just let him go out there, do his thing. But you know what? It's too late now. Cat's out the bag. So what do you think? Do you think this was a good decision to remove a guy named Robert Lee because of his name from the UVA game due to the whole situation in Charlottesville with the Robert E. Lee statue and the violence and the death that happened? If that's your decision, please tell me why. I'd love to know. I'd love to know why you're in favor of it or why you're against it. As for me, you know why I'm against it. It's just playing identity politics. You're trying to victimize one person because of their name. I mean, come on, a common Asian name, Lee. You're talking about Bruce Lee. I mean, come on, Jet Li. This is a common name. And you want to remove him from announcing, which is his job. Well, they actually transferred him from one game to another. But the news is out there. This is really ridiculous. This is ESPN. This is the corporate structure. This is the corporate beast. HR, all powerful. All of these special interest groups. Everybody trying to please the EEOC, affirmative action, the court system, try not to get sued, racial discrimination, all these different things are coming into the mix. It's the same thing going on with YouTube, right? They're trying to protect their advertisers from harmful content because of patent trolls and stuff like that. But I don't want to go down that road, so I'm going to digress. All these different things that come into it when there's a lot of money involved. It's too much politically correct stuff going on that's legislated at a corporate level, right? It's too many rules you got to follow that don't really benefit the company. If anything, they hurt the company. We see what's going on with ESPN losing numbers. The whole cord cutting thing, that's part of it. But also, when you're trying to project liberal values onto a conservative fan base. I'm a conservative. I like sports. Most liberals do not like sports. Most liberals do not watch sports. They do not patronize sports. So you can't have the corporate structure, which is pretty much entirely liberal, be fed onto people who are pretty much almost entirely conservative. At a certain point, there's going to be a clash. That's why ESPN laying off people. You know, they're struggling for ratings. People are leaving ESPN, going to Fox Sports 1. Now, I'm not saying Fox Sports 1 is perfect because they may also have some of the same corporate structure issues, but at least they're not going to be like ESPN where you'd have, you know, Caitlyn Jenner and Michael Sam kissing his boyfriends, but she can't kiss to her face and stuff like that. It's just too much. Give me my conservative sports and leave all the other stuff out of it, and give my man Robert Lee the opportunity to be able to work freely without compromise because of his name. Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.
And in fact, Tucker, ESPN has just issued a statement to me. If you want me to read it for you, I can do that. And the statement says as follows, and you may have it there to put on the screen as well. We collectively made the decision with Robert to switch games as the tragic events in Charlottesville were unfolding simply because of the coincidence of his name. In that moment, it felt right to all parties. It's a shame that this is even a topic of conversation. We regret that who calls play-by-play for a football game has become an issue.